Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And, you know, Bill, here we are as we record this. Trump has about 1 day left in office.
That's right.
Wow. We are at that point.
It has been a communication roller coaster, Tom. That is for sure. And I'm just glad we were able to hold on.
Yeah, me too. Boy, but doesn't it seem in the last week or so like it's been another world already, because we're not hearing about the hour by hour tweets from Trump.
Right.
And it seems like the temperature in some ways, now there are many, many things going on, but it does seem like the temperature has been lowered in the country, largely because the president has lost his megaphone.
Yeah, that's been a real tough piece for him, because as a professional brander, marketer, salesperson, the megaphone is the thing that is needed to engage the herd, the group of people, to move forward to buy your product or service, to be able to pick up what you're selling. And see, when a person promises something and they can't deliver it, then all of a sudden they're moving on to the next thing instead of being held accountable for the last thing that they promised and they didn't deliver. So whereas Barack Obama could have promised that, you know, you can keep your doctor in this healthcare plan, meanwhile, it was partly true that you could keep your doctor, but what he could not message is that, yet if your doctor leaves this practice or this insurance company, you can't go with them because you've already signed up for this other one and your doctor's now over here on this other team. Again, very, very unsettling, or very, very difficult, because how communication-wise can we have a healthy communication with others? And the temperature is lower. I mean, that is the thing to really capture.
It's shocking. And didn't you read somewhere that there's been a drop in fake news propagation, as a result of this?
Right. There was I heard that, once he's off of Twitter, that they were able to track that 73% of the promotion of fake stories and things, it dropped. There was a 73% drop. And that's like a lot, because that's retweeting and that's other people adding on to the story, or it's called riding the coattail of the disinformation. And because I'm inflamed about the disinformation, the activation of a fight, flight, or freeze, or even faint response is, I don't know what to do with this, And so, again, in writing, that's the way a little bit it's going. You were trying to get somebody to read what we have written and then activate and then promote what we've written to another person. And again, that is, really, really a challenge for us as human beings, because we do get hooked on stimulation and things that are important to us, that we've created a belief around. So that's a big part of this, kind of like, what are we going to do to get away from sound bites a little bit, get back to healthy communication, and be able to have our representatives be accountable for the words that they say, and be able to make them experience a greater sensitivity to when they open their mouth and they say something, that there's a cost. Like, is there a cost to what you're saying?
Boy, I'm sorry to laugh there, Bill, but I'm thinking about what you just said. Is there a cost to what they're saying? And so I'm reminded of something that I've seen in the last 24 hours. And it was a quote by Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Actually, not even a quote, a video where he's saying, if the Democratic controlled Senate follows through with this impeachment trial of President Trump after he's left office, then they've lost all credibility. And he keeps going on about how they shouldn't do it. This is a bad thing. And somehow they would be out of integrity and right, all sorts of things if they do it. And I'm like, who's the messenger for this? Lindsey Graham? They're out of integrity? I mean, I was starting to really look at it that way, because here's the guy that said, oh, if, Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies in the last year of Trump's office, we're not going to seat a replacement. We'll wait till the next president. And then he completely flipped, and he has no integrity. I mean, honestly, I feel like
no consequence. He didn't lose his election over that. I was going like, he's got to lose his election over that. Nope.
I thought he should have too. I think honestly it was bad messaging and communication, because I think all that his opponent should have done and all the messaging for his opponent should have all been, Lindsey Graham cannot be trusted. He is a liar and he's a hypocrite. I mean, you cannot trust any word that comes out of his mouth, because he's just going to change it in the future to suit whatever purpose he has at the time. If they had hammered that in a more eloquent way than I just did over and over and over, I don't think Lindsey Graham gets reelected.
Yeah, the accountability piece is not in play here.
So, I mean, now Lindsey Graham just feels emboldened because he got reelected.
Yes, he's emboldened. We have 6 years of him using his stature. And I don't know how often he's going to flip-flop back and forth, but for the state of South Carolina, that he is their guy, and they picked him. And that's what a democracy does, is they pick their representatives. You get to pick who's the state. It's not like, we're going to pick this point of view, and this is our guy, and this is what our guy is saying. And he's saying that, and we're not accountable for what he is, saying. He's not going to be accountable for what he's saying, and we're going to give him a pass just so that, our side, our team, our party is winning or has a say. So really, really very difficult.
It is really hard to, live with that from certain perspectives, certainly. Well, and the other interesting thing, Bill, that comes to mind, going back to Trump's Twitter megaphone being shut off, and I guess Facebook and right, Instagram, right? I think he was suspended from a bunch of platforms.
Yes.
And of course, he complains that, these platforms are infringing on his free speech, which, if you really dig into the reality of free speech, that's not actually the case, because the president has the ability to step up to the podium in the White House briefing room or, press room at any time and speak on anything. And every news outlet, newspaper, magazine in the country will hear him. And most, if not all, will
cover it,
write about it. Yeah, they'll cover it.
Yeah.
And he hasn't done that. He hasn't stepped up to that microphone. Why?
This is tough. This is, It's when you type something, it doesn't, you can depersonalize people and the situation in writing easier than you can in person. So it's like the points he gets into trouble when he gets in front of the camera and says, "It is what it is," instead of, "Why are you not enraged about doing something about it?" It is what it is really is. And when he does that in person and it comes out of his mouth, it's different than when you tweet that sentence, "It is what it is," on Twitter, because on Twitter, the reader can say, "It is what it is," while the president is being acceptance. At the meanwhile, he's doing the best he can because he's really, nobody could do it better than him. They can assign the meaning to it. But if you're in person, you're going like, "Well, it is what it is." Or even, "It is what it is." It's problematic in person. Well, you've noticed this while, you've gotten pretty vicious emails, and then you talk to the person online and the person's sweet as a cupcake,
Yeah, it's something that I began experiencing more than 20 years ago, Bill, actually, in my very first business in the internet 1.0 before the .com bust. And what I found is customers in particular, when they communicate with you over email, there was a different dynamic that was taking place when they communicate in writing versus picking up the phone and speaking with you. Some of them don't realize the tone and the way that they come across in an email is much more harsh, devoid of their tone and intent. Others, I think, feel emboldened to make more critical, harsh statements, assertions in writing, in email communication, or any kind of in writing communication than when they speak verbally. And I still see this today in business. I'll have, customers who sort of in my mind and others at my company who sort of in the cliche make a mountain out of a molehill, right? In email,
Right.
like, "Oh my gosh, this is such a terrible thing. How could you possibly do this?" And, and then, my staff, they'll read this email. It's like, "I don't even know how to respond to this." Well, certainly we work on that with languaging and communication, how to respond to it. But sometimes my recommendation to them is, you know what? You need to pick up the phone and call this person and talk to them, because my staff will take offense and not want to deal with this person the way they're speaking to them in text. And I was like, it's so hard to read someone's intent and tone. It's easy to misinterpret it. Now, they may be being unreasonable, but one of two things will happen if you pick up the phone. You both are going to communicate better and understand each other better and work through this issue. Or when they get on the phone and speak to you, they're not going to be as emboldened. They're not going to, feel that they're as entitled. They're not going to be as assertive. They're going to end up being more reasonable because you talk with them. It's a very different thing. And I know I'm not articulating this very well, Bill, but I've really have experienced this. And I think that's maybe to a large degree why President Trump has not been taking the podium and speaking to the American people in a live sense, or the press corps, to try to get his message across, because he's less comfortable doing it. And
it's a lot harder to do.
It's harder for him to deny that he intended one thing and not another when he says something controversial, when he does it verbally, than when he does it typing on his smartphone.
Yeah. Even when, when we look at how communication has moved over Twitter, and even the events of January 6th, for a Trump voter, a Trump follower, a Republican that would call themselves conservative gets invited to a party. Come January 6th, it's going to be wild. That's like a DJ inviting you to the dance floor. Come on out here. It's going to be wild. Well, yeah, it's going to be wild because we are going to get energized and rallied up about this thing that I am selling you to be true. Huh. So the person that's getting this text or email believes they have a personal relationship with the president. They don't have a personal relationship, but they believe they have a personal relationship with him. He has the same conservative values as I do, is what I've heard out of many people. I'm going like, conservative values. Which one of those are you talking about? The conservative value. And that further discussion, it's I believe in this guy instead of I am able to discern or separate what I'm being sold with what the reality is. So, even with people, coming in, well, people that were in, the Senate chambers and were in front of Ted Cruz's desk and we're looking through Ted Cruz's notebooks. Oh, he won't mind. Oh, there's got to be something in here that we can get these guys with. That's following a Twitter line. That's not following a truth. It's following, these people are doing this. He sold us out. No, he didn't really sell this out. No, this is what we wanted him to do. No, this is not what we wanted him to do. Okay, it's all good here. We checked out this desk with Ted Cruz because we don't have trust with Ted Cruz. I'm like, well, the when you friend somebody on Twitter and when you friend somebody on Facebook does not mean it's that you're their friend or that they're fully listening to you. They might read your tweet or post, but it doesn't. It's a false close relationship belief. I've just followed, somebody and somebody famous and now George Clooney will read my text. Julia Roberts will read my texts. Tom Hanks is going to read my tweets. No. And they don't have a relationship with you. And this is where it's really hard to get back to a healthy dialogue because we've got to move our way back to that healthy discourse that we're kind of looking at. How do we get people to debate effectively? How do we get people to have productive communication? So, that's really kind of where we can stick the landing a little bit.
Well, and, that's something that really jumped out at me last week when the House was debating the second impeachment, the article of impeachment that was brought after, accusing Trump of inciting insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. And, I was watching some of this and listening to some of it, even as I'm driving in my car, listening to the radio because it was all being broadcast live. And there was this interesting thing that happened. There was at this time that the House calls floor debate on the single article of impeachment. And because I think it's a judicial action, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House and then the ranking member on the Republican side each have a certain amount of time allotted to them to debate these articles, and they each would yield so much of their time to other members, and it was really this parade of, 100 plus representatives on each side of the aisle coming forward and making a statement. And it was really illuminating to me and disappointing to a large degree, because this is a serious thing. The House leadership has filed a charge of inciting insurrection against the president of the United States. And this is something that should be debated. In reality, what we have in the House of Representatives, and to a large degree in the Senate as well, people make up their mind as to how they're going to vote before this, in sort of air quotes here, floor debate is even opened. And this parade of representatives is just each trying to get in their 30 seconds to 1 minute to at most 2 minute soundbite for the media to pick up, so that their constituents back home will see, what they have to say about this and understand their position.
Right.
And I really don't think that was what the process intended for this. I think that it really intended for there to be thoughtful, considered debate on, hey, did the president really do this or did he not? And should we vote to impeach him and send it to the Senate for trial? It was so sad to see this. It's just, they were not listening to each other. They were talking past each other.
Right.
Both sides. They're both equally guilty of this. Nobody took the high road here. And Bill, I remember talking with you after that. You and I both saw some of this, and you kind of role played a little bit and were showing me how this could have been done differently.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I would love to spend a few minutes talking about that and sharing that with our listeners, because I think there is this, maybe I would say, resigned belief or conceded belief that debate doesn't really happen in our legislative branch, or at least not on the open floor. It may happen. They may, debate and compromise horse trade behind closed doors, but by the time it gets out to where any of us see it, dramatic moments like John McCain going up and giving the thumbs down to the vote on repealing the Affordable Care Act really don't happen very often.
Yeah, that's right. And he saved the health care for X number of people in his state by doing that. There was, as well as many million of hundreds of thousands or even 20 million Americans saved their health insurance, saved it by doing it. And
he didn't even have a debate. He just made a decision that I'm not doing that. And voted it down when his caucus didn't expect him to do that. They expected him to stay in line with what the party leadership wanted. But the debate, if it had happened, might have actually gotten a few other Republican senators to vote with McCain on that. Now, McCain's vote was enough. But how can our leaders in Congress debate more effectively? I think they need some training and skill, but let's just help.
It's oppositional right now. It's oppositional. So, thank you for the request, because we can really actually take a look at that. So for those of you who are just listening, I'm holding my 2 pointer fingers up, pointing at each other. That's two different people talking to each other. So Tom, that when it's oppositional, it's like two people shooting at each other, and they're just shooting words and seeing if they can get a bullet to stick. It's like a bad, action, shoot 'em up, right? It's like psh, 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 they're all shooting at each other, and and they're just trying to get one bullet to land. Now, instead of listening, and it's not to listen to agree or disagree, it's listen to provide proactive, grounded empathy for what the person has just said. So if somebody says some BS and it doesn't meet your need for truth, then you can't call it out as a lie. You've got to call it out as about how it affected you. So the person says something that you don't agree with. If you call them a liar, you actually lose. There might be a temporary win. My side says you're lying, but you're losing a long-term ability to communicate with that person. So let's do something easy here. Rand Paul voted down this thing about hanging, that some kind of hanging thing, and everybody was, the Senate's going like, this is easy. This is an easy one. You vote unanimously on this one. Don't hang people, bring them to court. That's what you do. But that vote, they didn't know how to skillfully talk through that. Well, it seems like that the senator would prefer justice to be dealt with a person personally rather than through the court system. Is that correct? Now all of a sudden it's not, why are you not trying to get people through the court system instead of voting down by saying, well, it sounds like that you don't want to, it sounds like that the senator has the belief that the current law has enough support, that what we currently have is enough, that we don't need this extra layer of just what my experience of the truth is. See, now I'm acknowledging or hearing what the person has said first. And then I'm saying, well, they feel doubtful and skeptical that this law is too much. And I can appreciate that. They would rather have less laws than more laws. And they just happen to be a lawmaker that's voting to keep less laws. Because they have a thought or a belief around, and the good people of Kentucky have a thought and a belief that less government is a better thing than people in our complex society having certain amount of ways to guidelines for these rules and these agreements that are legal or not. So Tom, the walkthrough is we've got to get people to become greater allies with each other and listen to each other, not as much from an adversarial position or an oppositional position, but from the place of, empathy and care for what the person has said before them. So let's go ahead and role play something, and let's see how this would work.
Well, so let's say you're Jim Jordan in the Congress last week, arguing for the one side and Jerry Nadler on the other. And I don't remember exactly what Jim Jordan said versus any of the other members of his caucus. So I'm just going to frame it here so one of the things that came out is he would say, he or someone on the Republican side would say, this impeachment effort is a waste of time. There is no way the president will be removed from power before January 20th when Joe Biden is sworn in. So we are wasting our time here.
No, so it sounds like a congressman is having a thought about saving time, and they're choosing to put time ahead of the rule of law. Okay, so my vote, and the reason why we're standing here is we're putting the rule of law ahead of the time efficiency that the that the congressman is advocating for. I think this would be worth the time to discuss instead of just thinking about the way the vote might land. And I think we need to stay closer to the rule of law on this one rather than figure out on whether or not we're going to go home to dinner. I think we need to do our job here. Now, I'm responding to what he said. I could come in with a prepared speech. The president cited this. The president did this. This is what he said, and that's the reason why. And I'm on the record because I said this. Instead of a responsive, collaborative narrative that acknowledges that the senator wants to save time so he can get home to dinner. He's not interested in following the rule of law, that you can't say everything and not be held accountable. And just because you might not get impeached with the few days that are left, it's still up to us to hold the line for integrity with the law. Now, how much soundbite would that get? Tons.
It would get tons because it's no longer they're each just talking past each other, making a statement in isolation. Now it's specifically responding to something someone else said. See, if any of them had that skill, whoever would do it, and it could have been the Republicans doing it, that sort of take a lot of wind out of the sails of the whole impeachment effort if they were skilled and knew how to do it.
Yeah, they could do the same thing right back.
I mean, so to me, that would be the shocker. And I think that whoever is unprepared,
right,
to then respond back to that in a thoughtful, compassionate way is going to end up looking like they're on the wrong side of the issue, aren't they?
Correct. That's correct. We've got to get back to a healthy response, a healthy dialogue versus a reactive response or a statement of this is where I stand. It's like, we know where you're going to stand when you vote. You don't have to tell the good reasons why you're doing that unless you're talking about the values that you're pursuing. Integrity to the law looks like, to me, if a person says the sentence, I'm going to go down there with you and you're the leader of the free world, that's enough to motivate a person's followers to break a law without impunity for the president, but not for the lawbreaker. He set up his followers and his voters to work against the rule of law, whereas we already went through the rule of law, and in 59 cases, the president's legal arguments were not accepted by the court of law. Regrettably, he motivated them against an untruth because we're a country of laws.
So I love this, Bill. This is great. Let me give you one more to role play. So I think I remember this one. McCarthy, who was, I think, one of the ranking members of the Republicans in the Congress. He's not the head of the Judiciary Committee, but he said, what the president did does not rise to the level of impeachment. We should not be impeaching him. We should seek to censure him instead. And that was one of his big statements. So how would you respond to that if you're Jerry?
Boy, I feel enthusiastic, that the congressman is bringing up censure. Censure is when a body votes to not allow a person to speak because they are not speaking from the rule of law. And does that mean that the congressman is going to put a proposal up in order to censure the president? Is that what the congressman would like? Because if the congressman wants to put a proposal up about censoring, I think I'm interested in that. I'd be willing to vote with the Congress with across the aisle to censure the president. Let it dangle. It's not instead of the impeachment, it's with it. Because here's the weird part about it. When we went through the Congressman McCarthy, that was the Red Scare and the communist in the
50s.
In the 50s, the Congress censured him. They had the courage enough to go, dude, sit in the back row, can't talk. They all voted to not let him speak. They did it to their own. And the other party, they're going like, you are not helpful to a functioning democracy. Back of the row, sit there. And it's the end of his, political career because, well, you can't speak anymore because you have used your language and scared people in believing into something that was not fully true. It was partially true, but it wasn't fully true. So they censored him. Guess what? Twitter and Facebook have censored the president. That's the way to think about this, is that they're the ones that are doing the job that the Congress and the Senate should be doing with the president. Mr. President, you've been censored from Twitter and Facebook. The Congress and the Senate just voted on it because you're making our work harder over here. But regrettably, when a party doesn't have really good policies and they're not advocating for something that is real or alive, they're advocating just to be oppositional, which regrettably, hey, listen, if the Republican Party wants to put a healthcare plan and sit it next to Obamacare and improve upon it and make it better so it helps the American people, I am interested in that discussion. But to promise it for 4 years and then not deliver it, oh, wait, not 4 years, excuse me, 12 years. I mean, it's unsettling. We've been fighting a healthcare thing all the way back to Clinton. We've been trying to get our nation, we're trying to get our government to care for its people through healthcare. That's what do it. But I'm not saying it's not a bear, and I'm not saying it's not a problem. But how do we get the people inside our borders cared for so they have a productive, tax-paying life? How do we do that? How do we get them and help them rise up and be a part of this experiment? How do we do that? Not like the way we're dealing with it. So,
well, here's one more I'll throw at you. It's interesting to see. These are some of the statements again that were being sort of hurled out. All right. So one representative, Matt Getz from Florida, said impeachment was branded unnecessary and divisive, is what he said. He said impeachment is unnecessary and divisive. It's only being done because Democrats want to keep the focus on President Trump so they can hold together their fragile coalition.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the congressman for mentioning that he has a thought that our coalition is fragile and that he's really concerned about our democracy in such a way that he's interested in reducing volatility in our House here. And I'm interested in reducing volatility and increasing cooperation and collaboration too. And there is a balance between allowing people to say and do things in the rule of law. And regrettably, this body is about the rule of law. It's not really about I'm interested in talking to people about something that's collaborative and cooperative. But when an individual like the president breaks the rule of law, somebody's got to hold him accountable. And I just feel disappointment that the congressman doesn't, and his party doesn't have the courage to hold his president accountable for the things he says. And I can see how dangerous it is for him to hold the president accountable because there's nothing like a great marketer and seller to tweet against you, in your party so that you aren't allowed to speak with truth and integrity. So thank you, Congressman Gates, for bringing that up.
They wouldn't even know how to deal with that. They really wouldn't.
No, they don't.
I mean,
yeah, it's sad and disheartening. Yeah, it is. Yeah,
and here's the other one. Remember earlier we talked about timing, that there wasn't enough time before.
Yeah, I love these role plays. These are like the best.
This is good. So this is another one. Tom Reed of New York said that Trump needs to be held accountable for his actions, but impeachment isn't the answer. A snap impeachment will undoubtedly fuel the divisions between our citizens at a time when the wounds of January 6th are still raw. We cannot and should not support a rushed, divisive action simply because the emotions of the moment demand it. That's not the American way, he said.
Oh, so it sounds like you would like to have a thoughtful debate about whether or not the president said the things he said or did the things he did or has built up his followers to take such an action. Listen, I feel inspired, and I would love to have an inspired leader protecting the American people from the coronavirus and inspiring his followers to stop this dreaded disease. This is not a rush. This is we need to fight and protect ourselves from someone who is dividing us. There's no rush here. There is a preventative action. This is the protective use of force. And the only protective use of force this body has is impeachment. That's the one we're exercising right now because that's the way the rule of law works. It's not to ignore the rule of law because we're worried about somehow someone's feeling. Is the Republicans worried about people's feelings right now? I feel doubtful and skeptical about that, but I really want us to pay attention and keep our eye on the ball of following the rule of law. And the president motivated his followers to march on the Capitol building when we were supposed to be doing our work here, scaring us, because the need for safety wasn't met in this house.
I think the other side's head would spin.
They don't know what to say to that.
They would be ill prepared. And again, it would, my gosh, if somebody, even if only one of the representatives of Congress could get this kind of skill.
Yep.
And they could be the spokesperson for their side, not to say everything, but just to help frame it in such a way.
Yeah.
It would really illuminate how unproductive those kinds of debate sessions are.
Yeah.
And they're nothing more than each representative trying to get in their soundbite to be used in a future campaign commercial or to help raise money back home, when they should be actually thinking through this, having a debate and making an informed decision. Right. Not just, it's more team politics.
Yeah, it is. It's when you're playing team politics, you're circling around values. You're not circling around talking points. So We want to circle around values because values give us as human beings strength. It is literally the concrete underneath our feet that we can walk on with a lot of smooth and ease, right? So if we're talking about what integrity looks like and how this is on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10 of an integrity breach, and the person's trying to say, no, it's not that bad. It's only a 5. Well, guess what? A 5 still gets people to storm the Capitol, and that's illegal too. So either you're going to censure him or we're going to impeach him. Pick it. So you guys put up a proposal to censure him. Go ahead and do that. If you don't want to impeach, put something up better. You want to censure? I'll be glad to vote for censorship. Try it. Of course, before he gets out, people are going to get pissed at you and you might get primaried. But guess what? Now you're accountable, McCarthy, for what you just said. Not just putting more propaganda in or distraction into the narrative. You got to be accountable for what you're saying. Okay. You want censure? Good idea. Put that up. Let's see what we got. Make a proposal. Knock on Nancy Pelosi's door. Hey, listen, I think we can get out of this by putting a real strong censure thing. I don't think we want to do this other thing here. And then make your case for that.
What's interesting is it would call him out on that because he's using censure as a defensive mechanism against impeachment. Yeah. But honestly, if it came to, exhibiting leadership and putting forward a bill for censure on the floor first to try to preempt impeachment, he never would have done it because then he's leading an effort to criticize the president.
Right.
He wouldn't have used it as an offensive, tool. But it really would call him out on that because if he doesn't do it, then he again lacks integrity.
The sizzle has more draw than the steak. The smell of the hamburger driving by a fast food restaurant has more draw in it than actually eating the food because the anticipation and the possibility of getting the hamburger, it starts our bodies towards hunger. The thing that's most unsettling about this, Tom, is that we are getting pulled into a hyper branding, marketing, sales, branding, marketing, sales with no delivery. There's nothing to deliver because unfettered capitalism can do that. I can sell my snake oil. Oh, so what? It kills, half the people that take it. That's unfettered capitalism with no regulations to say, hey, this stuff may be killing somebody. It's snake venom oil, and it gets you calm, and half the people have really bad reactions and half the people die. Do you think we may want to have some regulation on that? And this person might be overpromising on their snake oil. So it's, the salesman, the narrative of violence, of you need to be strong for your nation. Who doesn't want to get inspired by that? Be strong. Don't be weak. Now watch, I'll turn it right away. Be strong. Don't be weak. Wear a mask so that you can protect your family and your communities. I just got Trump reelected.
Right.
Just by him advocating for strength in a direction that protects the working person and the family and the community that he says that is a conservative value. It's not what he's standing for, clearly. From my viewpoint, other people would argue, no, he is. It's just no. It's like, look at all these accomplished. I'm going like, I'm not sure that they've been proportionalized correctly. It's like, yeah, you've got a brand new wall, but it's 12 miles long. And oh, by the way, it doesn't work all that well. It's like, where did they put it? Was it at the best place possible? I don't know.
Oh, and how was that wall paid for again?
Yeah, and
Did that come from Mexico? I don't know about
no,
that.
it came from the military budget.
Yeah,
And
the Defense Department, right?
the Defense Department paid for it. Yikes. So Tom, to stick the landing on this, because that's the hard part of this, is that listening. Can you listen and provide a strong, empathetic, compassionate response and lead the person, your speaker or the person you're listening to, into a place of accountability? Can you lead them there? In the past, we've talked about this. It's called walking the plank. Can you get the person to have integrity and tell the truth, before you push them into the sharks? It's like, listen, you're walking the plank here, but if you're not telling the truth and if you're not in integrity with the people in your district, we're going to make you pay for that. Not, we're going to allow you to reinvigorate the false beliefs that your voter has just because it's going to get you reelected, which is regrettably, the deal that, a lot of South Carolinians made with Lindsey Graham. I mean, they just made the deal. Yeah, he's one of us, talks like us, thinks like us.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if he doesn't have integrity. He scored for our team, and we're going to keep him on the team.
Yeah, and he just said that, on the Senate floor about Trump, but the next day he just said that, and that doesn't really count because he's still on our team. He's still a part of Trump, and yeah, because he didn't want to. All of a sudden he gets screamed in an airport and he flips on that. He flip-flops. It's like, what, where's the toughness in this? Did you, thick skin, at least a little bit? Or if Lindsey had the skill to the woman that was yelling at him, pause. Ma'am, you would like me to advocate for the president only. The woman would have said, yes, you're a traitor. So you would like me to hear that I'm a traitor because you would like me to support the president in a loyal way and not call him out on when he makes a mistake. Is that correct? Yeah. Ma'am, it's very hard when somebody does not follow the rule of law and then voters who are loyal to the person give him a pass on that. If you broke the same rule, you would spend time in jail. We're doing our best to support the president and trying to have his leadership move forward. But when he crosses the line, we've got to speak up to pursue the truth the best way we can. He would then set himself up to run for president if he spoke like that. Because now he wouldn't be a partisan hack. He would be, sorry, you'll see my bias just showed up there. Partisan hack.
Was
my
that label?
The label and diagnosis. Yeah, I put it right in the middle of the podcast. Boy, people are going to hold me accountable for that. Yeah, of course, there the anchoring of labels and diagnoses are happening in our brain, and we can still be compassionate to the point of view is that Lindsey's trying to support, his people and his votes, and he's using language the only way he knows how. It's not that he doesn't want to speak compassionately to people or honestly with people, but it's hard when people have so much emotion. They're voting from their emotion, and they're not really voting from their values. They're not voting from their needs. They're voting from their emotions, which is not the strongest play.
And, it's interesting. We've seen recently on both sides of it. Actually, it's really the same side, isn't it? Lindsey Graham being attacked in the airport in South Carolina when he flew back home by constituents, calling him a traitor for not supporting the president. And we saw Mitt Romney faced with the same type of thing in the airport, and because he was vocal in support of the impeachment as well, and of Trump inciting the mob. And if they each had some of these skills to be able to, because they are forced to speak, Mitt Romney, he speaks to people in the airport. He's a private citizen. He doesn't have the Secret Service protecting him, right? If he had some skill, and he's further along the way there because he has real values. It's just a matter of articulating them. Right. And giving empathy to the person who is challenging him.
That's correct.
It would be much more effective, and it would turn what's otherwise a recorded cell phone soundbite that helps fuel the fire and the division. It might actually help bring people to better understanding and closer together.
That's right. That's right. That's the thing that's really unsettling, is that these people got to lead. And you and I both know that there's a lot of money involved, with from these donors to these candidates individually. They do not get to do what they used to do, 30, 40 years ago. They don't get to raise their own fund and really have to work they have to work way harder at fundraising these days than they ever had to. And really their job is not really about writing laws, because they've got to spend so much of their time campaigning and raising money and talking to donors, and that's really a really kind of, one of the biggest tragedies of Citizen United. Money did not make things better. There's things that money makes better, but this is not one of them.
Yeah. Gosh, really, the volume of money spent in Georgia with the runoff election.
Oh my gosh.
Could have gone to such better use. And I'm sure the people of Georgia were so sick of all the advertising.
They got pounded. They got pounded by it, Anyway, well, this kind of, it kind of leads us in a really good spot about, how do we keep getting the quality of communication, and holding people accountable for their actions and their words, and be able to create a healthy debate where we're working on the problems that we need to solve as a nation and the ones that we need to face, and you can imagine what that would look like, when we can start to get into a place of restoration or healing, and so that we can have each other's back moving forward. That's really where we got to stick the landing, is to be able to help each other moving forward and communicate with each other better. It's not about winning. It's about how do we get into a place of collaboration and cooperation. That's really where the win is.
That would be nice, Bill. I really hope for that day.
It's a good one. All right. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.